Man, they really went at it, didn't they? Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I just wanted to talk about the recent debate between Dr. Fauci and Senator Rand Paul. I just wanted to address a few key things that I pulled out of their little debate and talk about them, and just share with you guys my opinions. If you don't want to watch the video, if you've already seen it, or you just want to listen to what I have to say, skip about 6 minutes, 15 seconds. That'll take you to where I start talking. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get watching this video, shall we?
Dr. Fauci, in a recent British study, David Wiley and others found that no symptomatic reinfections from COVID-19 after following 2,800 patients for several months. In fact, there have been no reports of significant numbers of reinfections after acquiring COVID-19 naturally. Shane Crotty, a virologist at La Jolla Institute for Immunology, concludes from his experiments that the amount of immune memory gained from natural infection would likely prevent the vast majority of people from getting hospitalized disease, severe disease for many years. In this study, which was published in Science, Dr. Crotty showed that antibody levels stayed relatively constant with only modest declines over 6 to 8 months. Dr. Crotty reported that, notably, memory B cells specific for the spike protein, or RBD, were detected in almost all COVID-19 cases with no apparent half-life at 5 to 8 months after infection. In other words, Dr. Crotty found significant evidence of long-term immunity after COVID infection. Furthermore, Dr. Crotty noted B-cell memory to some other infections has been observed for as long as 60-plus years after smallpox vaccination, or even 90 years after a natural infection with influenza. That was a woman who got the Spanish flu, still showed immunity 90 years later. So rather than being pessimistic towards people gaining immunity after they've had COVID or had a vaccine, studies argue for significant optimism. In fact, there have been no scientific studies arguing or proving that infection with COVID does not create immunity. There have been no studies showing significant numbers of reinfections. Of the 30 million Americans who have had COVID, only a handful of reinfections have been discovered. In fact, the New York Times reported last fall more than 38 million people at the time worldwide had been infected with the coronavirus, and as of that date, fewer than 5 of these cases had been confirmed by scientists to be reinfections. Scientists interviewed for the article concluded, in most cases, a second bout with the virus produced milder symptoms or none at all. Given that no scientific studies have shown significant numbers of reinfections of patients previously infected or previously vaccinated, what specific studies do you cite to argue that the public should be wearing masks well into 2022?
I'm not sure I understand the connection of what you're saying about masks and reinfection. We're talking about people who have never been infected before.
You're telling everybody to wear a mask, whether they've had an infection or a vaccine. What I'm saying is they have immunity, and everybody agrees they have immunity. What studies do you have that people that have had the vaccine or have had the infection are spreading the infection? If we're not spreading the infection, isn't it just theater?
No,
If
it's
you had
not.
the vaccine and you're wearing 2 masks, isn't that theater?
No, that's not. Here we go again with the theater. Let's get down to the facts. Okay, the studies that you quote from Crotty and Sete look at in vitro examination of memory immunity, which in their paper they specifically say this does not necessarily pertain to the actual protection. It's in vitro.
And what studies can you point to that show significant reinfection? There are no studies that show significant reinfection.
Let me finish the response to your question, if you please. The other thing is that when you talk about reinfection and you don't keep in the concept of variants, that's an entirely different ballgame. That's a good reason for a mask. In the South African study conducted by J&J, they found that people who were infected with wild type and were exposed to the variant in South Africa, the 351, it was as if they had never been infected before. They had no protection. So when you talk about reinfection, you've got to make sure you're talking about wild type. I agree with you that you very likely would have protection from wild type for at least 6 months if you're infected. But
Point to
we
the
in our
study, though.
country
Point to
now
the study
have
that
variants that are
shows
circulating.
Significant reinfection. What study shows significant reinfection, hospitalization, and death after either natural infection or the vaccine? It doesn't exist. There is no evidence that there are significant reinfections after vaccine. In fact, I don't think we have a hospitalization in the United States after the 2-week period after the second vaccination. We
Yeah,
don't have a death in the United States.
You're not hearing what I'm saying about variants. We're talking about wild type versus variants.
And
now,
what proof is there that there are significant reinfections with hospitalizations and death from the variants? None in our country. Zero.
Well, because we don't have a prevalent of a variant yet. We're having one. Can I finish? We're having
But you're talking about
117 that's
conjecture.
becoming more
You're making your
dominant.
policy based on conjecture.
No,
You have the
it isn't
conjecture that
based
we're
on
going to get
conjecture.
variants, so you want people to wear a mask for another couple years.
No.
You've been vaccinated, and you parade around in 2 masks for show.
No.
You can't get it again. There's virtually 0% chance you're going to get it, and yet you're telling people that have had the vaccine, who have immunity. You're defying everything we know about immunity by telling people to wear a mask who've been vaccinated.
No.
Instead, you should be saying there is no science to say we're going to have a problem from the large number of people being vaccinated. You want to get rid of vaccine hesitancy? Tell them they can quit wearing their mask after they get the vaccine. You want people to get the vaccine? Give them a reward instead of telling them that the nanny state's going to be there for 3 more years and you got to wear a mask forever. People don't want to hear it. There's no science behind it.
Well, let me just state for the record that masks are not theater. Masks are protective. And we
You have
ask
immunity there, theater. If you already have immunity, you're wearing a mask to give comfort to others.
Senator
You're
Paul,
not
out of
wearing a
time,
mask
and I
because
would
of any
like Dr.
science.
Fauci to
I
be able-
totally disagree with you.
Dr. Fauci, if you could respond so that
Told you they went at it. So let's get to this. I don't like long videos. Rand Paul kept talking about no reports of reinfection. He talked about the 2,800 individuals. He talked about how the antibodies were pretty much in every single one of them, and that they stayed with them, and that there was like almost no cases with a half-life of the antibodies, which is just another way of saying that your body did not lose them. They did not go away. He mentioned the 38 million people who were infected originally. He talked about that there was fewer than 5 cases who had reinfections, and of those, they only had mild or no symptoms at all. And doing the math, I mean, that means a percentage, a ridiculously small percentage. We're talking about a point followed by 4 zeros and a 1. Or another way of looking at it is 1 out of 7.6 million. That is incredibly rare. That is almost ridiculously rare. There are not many diseases more rare than that. You got the Stone Man disease. That's so rare of a disease that we can't do anything for it because there's just not enough evidence. There's not enough data on it to do anything. And that's 1 out of every 2 million people. You have the Hutchinson's Guilford progeria syndrome, and that's 1 out of 4 people, or 1 out of 4 million. I mean, that disease is so rare that, it's twice as rare as the Stone Man disease, and it is almost twice as rare, or is twice as more likely than the COVID-19 reinfection. That's how rare that is. Basically, his argument was new variants and that you don't know. It's like, man, that's not an excuse. That is conjecture. You're basing policy out of misinformation. You don't have it all there. You don't have a complete set of data to make an opinion that is valid enough to make an informed decision. He mentioned that, a lot of those things that he was talking about, that Rand Paul was talking about, were in vitro, which is basically just studying the disease in like a test tube, a petri dish, somewhere outside of the organism. And that can have an effect on whether or not it is true that the data they are getting, but it's not. That's how every disease is studied, pretty much. They got to look at it. again, there's no real evidence of significant reinfection, and of that, it's pretty rare. I mean, he is defying, my mistake, immunity at this point. Immunity means you can't get it. It's straightforward, you can't get it. What do we have vaccines for? Vaccines are used to create a herd immunity. That's why we have the flu shot. That's why, hell, kids these days, I am now finding out they don't even vaccinate people for a lot of diseases like smallpox. I got a vaccine for smallpox, but kids nowadays don't get it because there's really no way you're getting it. That's because we beat it with immunity. And getting the vaccine, being vaccinated, and then continuously walking around weeks later with a double mask is kind of like a slap to the face. A dual slap to the face. Both cheeks, just pow, pow. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it other than this. But I mean, just looking at this, it really is like a double smack to the face. You have this really bad disease out here that's supposedly really bad, and you get hit with it. I mean, it hit everybody hard. So you get the vaccine, and now they're telling you that you got to live pretty much the same way you were before. I mean, that is a straightforward right hook to the jaw. That's double-edged sword. That's doing what you need to do and still getting stabbed. And oh boy, this country is in trouble, people. But that's the end of this video. I made my points. Please leave some comments in the comment section about what I can do better as a content creator, things that you want me to talk about. That's what I'm here for. I'm gonna continue talking my own opinion. I wanna make this something for the people who have watched. I don't have a lot of people who've watched, but I'm nearing 100, and that's really big to me. That's 100 people who have at least listened to somewhat what I've said. So I really thank you guys for that. But other than that, it's the end of this video. Thanks for watching.